Oh, hello and welcome to What We Talking About with Jamie Jakes. I am him, and today I'm here to talk to you about my best ball fantasy football season. Last season, I took home a 62% return on investment in single season best ball drafts, and so can you. And this video is designed to show you exactly how to do it. So to get a few things out of the way, the overview. So I will be showing you my actual dollar amounts. I do have, compared to a lot of other experts, a pretty low bankroll, but it is going to be a little bit more for some people. But the only reason I'm showing you this is just to make sure you guys know that I'm legit. So here you go. So that's 460, taking home 745. A very, very good return on investment, just under 62%. You can check my math at home. A little bit about me. I am a practicing chiropractor in Texas. I have a couple of small practices in Dallas and in Grapevine. The reason I tell you that is because where I attack fantasy football is entirely based on, or mostly based on, my own eye test, because I am, a bit of an expert on biomechanics and human movement. And of course, injury concerns is the way I kind of handicap and decide the guys that I want to attack or the guys that I want to attack. I have compiled 4 rules to follow so you can have sustainable success year after year in best ball fantasy, because it is something I believe is beneficial, something you can profit on year after year. So let me explain why. Number 1 rule for sustained success in profiting in best ball fantasy football is stay away from the large contests. In my opinion, the large contests are kind of more fun, but they do require a lot of luck, and the strategy involved, the meta involved with these massive contests really forces you to draft in a way that I don't really love to draft, because you're drafting players that you don't necessarily believe in just because of a strategy thing. And 2, if you're going to have sustained success year after year, you're going to take massive hits. And most of the experts you're seeing cashing in on these massive best ball winnings are spending tens of thousands of dollars year after year, tying up their money for an entire football season. And some years they're not going to really profit from it. So they'd be better off investing that money elsewhere. I like sticking to single season drafts where you can get a little bit unlucky, and we're going to go over it a little bit later, and you can still take home money year after year. If you do have a massive bankroll and you don't mind spending tens of thousands of dollars year after year, so you do hit the big bonus every 4 or 5 years by hitting a big jackpot, that's fine with me. Just not the way I prefer to play, and in my opinion is not going to be the way for a lot of people with lower bankrolls to really take advantage of. Number 2 rule for profiting in fantasy football is beware of advanced analytics, you guys. There are a lot of nerds on the internet who establish themselves as fantasy football experts when they really don't even know ball. They don't watch the game. What they do is they purchase advanced analytics that are premium, paywall protected assets, and then they use those assets, and then they claim they are experts because they are able to access these advanced analytics. What they don't tell you about advanced analytics is they're not great predictors of actual future performances. They look really good on spreadsheets. You'll see them all off-season charts. Things to be aware of is metrics versus stats. So metrics are made up, stats are real, okay? If you ever see something that ends in over expected, so yards over expected per reception, for example, that is a metric that's entirely made up and has not been proven to predict future performances. All metrics have their place, but what we have found in fantasy football is the thing that is predictable are real stats. And there are like advanced real stats. Target percentage is a real stat. Yards per route run is a real stat. There are more advanced ways to look at it, but in real life, those are going to actually be the predictors of what you are going to see next season. Rule number 3 will be use basic strategy when you're drafting. And I'm going to show you how all offseason, how to use this basic strategy. And I'm going to show you a pretty good example now of one of my championship winning leagues that I was in this past season. Best Ball Fantasy, for this reason, is much more profitable for your average Joe than sports gambling, because in Best Ball Fantasy, you are going up against other dummies on the internet, where in sports gambling, you are going up against highly efficient sports books that have been alive for sometimes decades and have been figuring out how to put out the best number for decades. Both take a rake. A rake is the percentage of the pot that is cut from the competitors and taken in by, for example, Underdog Fantasy or your favorite sports book, MGM, FanDuel, you name it. Everybody takes a certain percentage of the rake. 10% is a pretty low rake, by the way. Oftentimes, sports books will take 11%, 12%, 15% rake on an even bet, which is really highway robbery, if you ask me, because those small percentage points make up a big, big difference at the end of the day. So I think Best Ball Fantasy Football is the best way to make money in sports gambling, if that's what you want to think about it. Don't tell Texas it's sports gambling, but hey, here we are. So here we are. I'm going to pull up an example for y'all of one of my fantasy football championship teams, just to go over what I am kind of talking about when I mean basic strategy. And it'll be a good review of kind of how I did this season in fantasy football. So I'm going to pull up my team for you right here. My team won me $20. Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, whoops, Jordan Love, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker, Jerome Ford, Christian Kirk, Tyler Lockett, Jahan Dotson, Elijah Moore, Rashid Shaheed, Puka Nacua, Mark Andrews, David Njoku, Tyler Higbee, Tyler Conklin, and Luke Musgrave. Okay, so a lot of you might be noticing there's a different number of players that you might have been expecting if you were to be following certain analysts. So my first rule, don't follow one mind track, right? Zero RB. There's a lot of people who are doing victory laps online right now saying zero RB was the way to go all season. Let the draft dictate how you are going to approach it. And again, please subscribe to the channel. We'll tell you how to do it. But this is a great example of a draft where if I would have gone zero RB, which was the hot thing to do all offseason, I wouldn't have won this league. Okay. So we are reviewing this right here. I am this guy right here, JMJKSHB. By the way, if you use that as your promo code, you will get a double points match on Underdog Fantasy. I encourage y'all to use that as your promo code if you are setting up a new Best Ball account. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, of course, went down with a hamstring injury. I don't necessarily blame him for drafting him there. So I had an option. Sure, I would have been fine with Tyreek Hill, to be fair to anybody who's criticizing this video. I took Christian McCaffrey, which of course we all know was the best option to go with, over guys like the other receivers who were available. You could argue I didn't make the best decision there. Maybe I could have gone with Tyreek Hill, but hey, who cares? So where it's really going to get juicy is we'll go around the bend, and we are going to get to my Derrick Henry pick. This is like blasphemy in the offseason. Probably still is blasphemy now. Taking two running backs back-to-back in the best ball format. Now we know Derrick Henry had a pretty damn good season. I got a great value with him right there. But if I would have reached for guys I didn't like as much at the time, and rightfully so for pretty much all of them, I would have really, really messed up, and I would not have won this league. Devontae Smith, if I would have reached on T. Higgins, who I was for me, it was obvious to fade him. Taking a wide receiver 2 at the end of the second round is just unbelievable. I don't know why exactly we were doing that. Other running backs, DK Metcalf, Mark Andrews, Amari Cooper, Deebo Samuel. I think I made the best decision there, in my opinion, taking Derrick Henry instead of reaching on a guy like Amari Cooper. Okay? So we go around the bend. Mark Andrews makes it back to me. Whoopsie daisy, he tears his ACL. Still a good process pick, in my opinion. I think he would have been probably tight end 1 or tight end 2, depending on your scoring format. For half PPR, I think he probably would have been tight end 1 in this league if he would have stayed healthy for the rest of the season. But that's kind of my point is, hey, I got unlucky. My third draft pick got injured. If this was a season-long competition where only a very small percentage of the top end make a profit, I'm already out. I already lost my money on this league. Instead, I won this league. I won 20 bucks in my pocket. So that's why I really don't recommend, unless you have a massive, massive bankroll and don't mind having tens of thousands of dollars tied up year after year for that $3 million payout every 2 or 3 years, whatever. Take your profit where you can, because this would have immediately eliminated me from contention for a jackpot winning opportunity. So we are making our way all the way around back here to my next pick. So right now I'm thinking to myself, I have running back, tight end to start my draft. Again, blasphemy for most people on the internet leading up to this draft. I take Christian Kirk. So this is an opportunity for me to take a really, really good value. We'll talk a little bit more about it later, but there's a great opportunity to talk about it right now. Taking Christian Kirk here this offseason, if you really think about it, he was going so far behind Zay Jones was going last year, who was the wide receiver 2 for the team last season. Of course, Calvin Ridley comes in, and now everyone thinks Christian Kirk, who the team paid a lot of money, is going to immediately be usurped by a guy who hasn't really played in 2 years, who hasn't performed well in fantasy football or in real life in 3 years. I'm going to take Christian Kirk because, in my opinion, at the time, I thought he was going to be still the number 1 wide receiver of the team. Of course, he still was number 1 wide receiver for the team for the whole season up until he got injured, got put on IR, which would have eliminated this team from contention from the best ball massive contest. Instead, I took a small profit instead of chasing the big giant cash bucket for these giant fantasy football competitions. So I think Pat McAfee always says, and it's not his saying, but pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. And I want to stay a good little piggy. You will see around the bend here. So, okay, I already have 2 running backs, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry. Really, really good running backs. I would have loved to take a wide receiver here if I had a one-track mind going into every single draft. Like, this is how I'm going to attack every single draft. You got to stay flexible with these drafts and let them come to you. I had Kenneth Walker drop to me at 52, 5.4 in this draft, and it was way too big of a value for me to pass up on. Of course, this was in that part of the offseason where it was reported that he was actually going to be healthy. He had a really bad groin injury. I don't know if you guys remember. That got me off of him leading up to the season. Had a clean bill of health at the time, and his ADP, in my opinion, was still way, way too low. So I took a great value there, taking Kenneth Walker. Also could have taken Aaron Jones at this slot, which would have been fine. But look at the wide receivers that got taken after this pick that I would have had to reach on, okay? Marquise Brown, Chris Goodwin, Mike Evans would have obviously been a really, really good pick for me to take there too, but I was kind of hoping he would make it all the way back around. So it was an ADP pick for me, taking a risk that hopefully a wide receiver makes it back around town for me, and I can take advantage of it right there. Instead, I take a running back, and I'm like, hey, I don't even have to worry about running back for the rest of this draft too much. Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman Jr., Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, who I was really hoping would make it back around to me. Mike Evans or Jordan Addison would have been really, really nice to make it back around. It was kind of what I was hoping for. Instead, he gets taken right before me, so I take Tyler Lockett. Not even a great pick. This is another thing. Where I profited on a team that really wasn't that good, okay? Just because I was able to out-strategy some of the other doofuses in this draft, okay? So taking Tyler Lockett there for my second wide receiver off the board. But, hey, I can use Kenneth Walker in that flex spot week after week instead of using a wide receiver. And I'm going to have a lot of wide receivers late in the draft that I'm going to be targeting to try and fill those voids, okay? Still probably the best pick from that turn. Gabe Davis had a couple of good games for best ball fantasy. Traylon Burks, he was not great for any format this season. Dallas Goedert, Dalvin Cook, and then Jahan Dotson makes it back around for me as my third wide receiver, my wide receiver 3, which, telling you right now, doesn't look good on paper, but he actually scored points for me this season in the best ball fantasy football format. So I was able to cash in on Kenneth Walker's big games. on Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey virtually every single week and still turn this pretty good profit. Going back around town, so now I'm thinking now I really need to bolster this wide receiver room, taking Elijah Moore, who was a pretty darn good value for where I got him here, 93 overall, a guy that scored points for me while I had Kenneth Walker and other guys filling in that flex position. Back around town, probably my second best pick of this draft, no spoiler alerts yet, David Njoku, a massive, massive value as my tight end 2 on this draft, okay? So I've got 3-4 wide receivers, 3 great solid running backs I feel really good about, and an elite tight end at the time that we were thinking, and a tight end that had elite potential. Turns out he did, okay? Especially towards the end of the season when Joey Flacco took over. Did not pick Joe Flacco in this fantasy football build, by the way, for those of you who are wondering. So now I'm thinking I went 0 quarterback, right? That's okay. I got Geno Smith. And then next pick, I got Aaron Rodgers. Again, a lot of injuries on this team. Would have eliminated me from a massive jackpot. Instead, I win the whole league first place, okay? Coming back around, Jordan Love. And look at all of these guys that I'm getting around this draft that I'm avoiding that didn't really amount to much. And instead, I bolster up my QB room at this phase of the draft because that's the way the draft fell to me. I didn't reach for anybody late. I took what I could get and moved on. Geno Smith was great. Jordan Love in fantasy football was really, really good this season. So a great value for me getting a guy, basically my starter for the whole season at 141 because I was patient. I didn't reach for anybody. Okay. So look at all these names going around this turn here. I got Jordan Love 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spots before Bryce Young went. Okay. So just an absolutely massive value. And then I'm just taking best available, you guys. Tyler Higbee right there scored points for me. Didn't need a tight end at the point, but tight end in best ball fantasy football, tight ends are so up and down with their scoring. In my opinion, it was a really good option to take some potentially big scoring tight ends late in the draft to fill in for guys that might get injured or might have bye weeks like Mark Andrews or just down weeks like the tight end position has. So I thought taking Tyler Higbee as the next best player available was a pretty good option. And I think I was pretty much right. I guess I would have been better off taking Rashee Rice. Moving around back to my next pick, Rashid Shaheed. This is just understanding fantasy football format, you guys. He is a big, deep threat. So in best ball fantasy, he's very, very valuable. In redraft leagues where you actually have to put him in a lineup week after week and pray he doesn't get like 2 targets for 3 yards and have to hope that he gets his 4 targets for 150 yards. That's just Rashid Shaheed, baby. And going around the board for my 4th running back off the board, Jerome Ford. I'm thinking handcuffed to Nick Chubb at the time, which honestly paid out. He scored a lot of points for me in this league as well. And on top of it, I was able to trust my eyeballs and think, hey, this guy's good. The Cleveland Browns believe in him. So he's going to get touches either way. I wasn't too concerned about Pierre Strong. I think this draft was after the Pierre Strong trade, if I remember correctly. So you can still take these, the way best ball fantasy works is you can still take these handcuff guys. You can still take these like 0 RB strategy guys and profit on them if you let the draft come to you. Don't reach, take the values where you can get them. Goes around town, obviously best in that turn. Raheem Mostert would have been pretty smart too. But anyways, I get Tyler Conklin, just a guy that I thought Aaron Rodgers was going to be throwing a lot of the balls to. I'm not a big stacker, but I did have Aaron Rodgers in this league. Obviously didn't pay off, but I think Tyler Conklin scored points for me a few times this year. And like I said, my take on the tight end position still is if you can get a lot of them late at a good value, it's a pretty good option to take because even good tight ends like the top tight ends in the league, Laporta now, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews in the past, they will have some big down games, and you're going to want the opportunity to make up for it with a Tyler Conklin or more likely a Tyler Higbee falling into the end zone once or twice in the game and getting you a bunch of points in just one position. Take Luke Musgrave again. Again, same reason. And then finally, taking Puka Nacua. Don't give up at the end of drafts. If you don't know who to pick, subscribe to the channel. We'll tell you who to pick in the 18th round. I was taking Puka Nacua a lot, and we'll get to that in just one second. But a guy who definitely factored into me winning this league, because I think the wide receiver position in particular, at least this season, we'll see how next season goes, wide receiver, that position, you were able to take massive, massive values, even minus Puka Nacua. Guys like Michael Wilson, who scored a lot of touchdowns this year despite having some shoddy quarterback play for most of the season, was still a pretty damn good value here in the 18th round, getting Puka Nacua at 18.9. Obviously, was the determining factor me getting first place in this league. And a great pick that honestly would have been wasted if this was a massive contest that we were talking about here. Switching up my screens for you, taking us back to where we all started, which was my best ball fantasy football season. And here it is, pulling it up right here. And I'm pulling it up because I want to go over my exposure, because that will bring us to the last rule for this season of best ball fantasy football, how to make a profit in best ball fantasy football. That final rule, and I've kind of already gone over it, is chase good values in drafts. Don't reach, draft based accordingly to the ADP. If you do reach for a guy and that guy busts or that guy gets injured, not only did you get a bad value on them and you reached and missed on other guys that you could have gotten, and you maybe get that guy back around the corner like an Aaron Rodgers, and then it's not a travesty for your team. Don't reach. It's not worth it unless it's very, very late in the rounds. I definitely would start taking Puka Nacua in the 17th, 16th round, depending on how the build went. Avoid massive busts, okay? Chuck Bass is a really, really good follow on Twitter. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, he posted the biggest bust candidates, and a lot of them, honestly, were pretty predictable if you follow my previous tenets of believe in your eyes, believe in my eyes, believe in the stats, whatever you want to think about. Travis Kelce was a big-time fade for me, just based on the other guys that were going around him. In my opinion, you were obviously better off going with A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, and Amon-Ra St. Brown was a guy that was going like right after Travis Kelce. You know, sometimes Tyreek Hill was going after Travis Kelce in a lot of best ball drafts. And it just didn't make sense to me because I thought there was going to be a lot of tight ends that were going to shine. And in best ball, you can just stack the bottom of your drafts with a lot of tight ends that are basically free, that you're not spending big draft capital on, that are going to fall into the end zone. Just take tight end ones late. In best ball, that was the most efficient way to do it. Austin Eckler, tough to predict that one. I didn't see that one coming, even though I was lucky enough to avoid drafting him a whole ton because I was taking more Bijan Robinson, which was less of a bust, but still a bust, of course, for where you were taking him. You know, obviously, he's got a great future as far as dynasty goes, and I'll probably be taking him again pretty high next season, especially if Artie Smith is out of town. Anyways, Stephon Diggs, tough to predict that one. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. Patrick Mahomes is a really, really good one because he had one QB1 season, first one in a while for him after Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen just dominate. He was going so early, and in my opinion, he was in the same tier as the guys I could get late second round, preferably early third round, like Jalen Hurts, who I did take a lot in best ball fantasy football just because I thought he was going to be playing all the seasons. So I think a lot of the people reaching on Patrick Mahomes, you should have seen that coming. Tony Pollard, tough to predict, but a bit of a risk at where you were taking him, just too much of a risk, and no reason to reach on guys that you just really don't know about. You don't know how it's going to go for them. Instead, take some swings and misses on guys like Alexander Madison that did score a couple of points for you, but you got later in drafts, of course. Jalen Waddle, big injury concern previous season. Don't chase injuries. Najee Harris was like the whole Steelers like hype leading up to this season was so confusing to me because I was like, what's going to be different? Like, use your brains, guys. What's going to be different? Same offensive coordinator, same head coach, same offensive line for that matter. Why are we chasing Najee Harris, and why aren't we absolutely smashing Jalen Warren? Do your due diligence. put on a 5-minute highlight film of Jaylen Warren, and I don't know, maybe not, but I think most people who watch football with brains would be able to tell you that Jaylen Warren is going to take some snaps away from Najee Harris, no matter what anybody says preseason. Calvin Ridley was such an easy fade for me. I was saying all offseason, y'all, we're drafting Calvin Ridley really, really near his ceiling. And I don't think a lot of people would like to admit it because he had one good route on air in preseason. Don't overreact to things, guys. Calvin Ridley didn't perform the last time we saw him on the football field. He had a great season, great breakout performance, and then he puttered away, and then he took a leave of absence, massive red flag for any professional athlete, and then he gets suspended. So we see 2 full years of virtually zero production out of this guy. And then we're just expecting him to snap his fingers and be the number 1 target on an NFL team. I thought best case scenario, he was going to have to ingrain himself into the lineup. Of course, week 1, I think I'm the biggest dumbass in fantasy football because he has a massive game. But then Christian Kirk starts taking over that wide receiver room until, of course, Christian Kirk gets injured. And even then, Calvin Ridley didn't really shine like you would like to see after the true wide receiver 1 of the team gets injured. Dameon Pierce, just a guy that honestly didn't pass my eye test. I hate to say that about the guy, but a guy I was really discouraged about leading up to the season. Miles Sanders, a lot of hype, but a lot of also question marks up in the air. So where you were having to take him, I thought was a bit of a massive risk. Dalvin Cook, and I will admit, I was on the Dalvin Cook train. I was chugging along. I was promoting Dalvin Cook to everybody who would listen to me. Totally wrong on that. Even if Aaron Rodgers, I have to admit, even if my whole take on it was he's there for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is in charge of the team, so I think he's going to be involved a lot. In my opinion, now looking back on it, now we'll see how he looks on the Ravens because late in the season he did look good himself. I was way too excited about him, especially after I realized like he got his own season-ending surgery and he was actually activated after Breece Hall was activated. So yeah, I just didn't use my brain there, at least most season, but still I didn't get a massive ADP on him because there was a lot more guys I had ranked ahead of him that were going right after him in ADP. So I did luck out there that I didn't have a massive stake in Dalvin Cook because I followed my other guidelines that I've set out for y'all today. The next portion of Chase Good Values, just understand the format. Like I said, Rashid Shaheed, and I'm going to pull up my exposure for y'all here right now. Rashid Shaheed owned in 46% of my leagues. Now, these even include my 3-person leagues. I did do a few 3-person leagues just to warm up for my season. So we'll apply that filter. So now these are only 12-team drafts, okay? Rashid Shaheed, 49.6%. I saw you such a massive value because I believed in him. So even with Michael Thomas coming back and, of course, Chris Olave, who was the true number 1 there, I thought they potentially got a slight upgrade at quarterback, and I was expecting him to catch some massive balls, and he did. He scored a lot of touchdowns, caught some massive balls, and in best ball fantasy, when you can start 3 wide receivers and potentially 4 in your flex, I was taking him basically every single time, and I was reaching ahead maybe half a round. You can get away with that. You can't get away with reaching up 1-2 rounds early in the draft. It's just not smart, not an efficient way you can do it because the best way to get efficiency is you pray that guy falls to you, and when he does fall to you, you take him, right? Christian Kirk, just another guy I thought was a massive value, super safe. And you won't see these percentages from a lot of the guys that are doing the contest because the meta of the contest is trying to get as many unique teams as possible. When you're just doing single leagues, you don't care how unique your team is. If you believe in a couple of guys like Rashid Shaheed and Christian Kirk, you're going to take them every single time. Tyler Conklin, not great. He scored a lot of points for me in a lot of leagues, but not a great value. But I took him so late, I didn't reach, played by my rules, so it didn't hurt my pocketbook that much. Taysom Hill, a guy that, again, best ball format, know your format. You're not playing dynasty football here. You're playing best ball fantasy. And we all know Taysom Hill, I don't care how old he is going to score, 8 touchdowns every season and get a lot of rushing yards as well. He's used as a running back for that team. This guy I absolutely believed in this format, frustrating with Taysom Hill in redraft where you have to set the lineup, but not here. And then Puka Nacua, just a guy that passed my eye test that I didn't really know about leading up to the draft, didn't know about after the draft, and just found out about him reading Twitter reports from the LA Rams. And the beat reporter did a really, really good job. Made me go back and research what he was all about. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, how did I miss on this guy? Passes the eye test. I didn't even look at his 40 time. I didn't know his 40 time until, he broke a rookie receiving record, hopefully this week. Jordan Love, another guy that passed my eye test, another guy that I just believed in the Packers organization. Got, rocky road in real life, but in fantasy football, he was great. Especially watching him in preseason, I'm like, hey, he's going to run. If he's going to run, that's going to be a great value for me where I'm getting him that late in drafts. And then same thing with David Njoku, Dallas Goedert, guys I truly, truly just thought were magnificent. And I was able to, because I was in this format, able to take him at 31%, 31%, 31%. You won't see that with other fantasy football analysts online who are doing the massive contests, because that's just not the strategy that they have to follow. It's just not a fun way to play fantasy football, in my opinion. Jordan Love, David Njoku was due for a breakout, just a great value where I was getting him in Dallas Goedert, of course, a guy I was really, really a big believer in. And now we'll see, like I was an excellent drafter though. I don't mean to sound like I'm like a genius and I can predict the future, because I really can't. I wasn't able to predict the future. I missed on guys like Deshaun Watson even before the injury. I was a big believer in him. Granted, just like Jordan Love, he was able to run the football a lot, so he was beneficial for fantasy football when he was healthy. Still don't feel good about it now. Geno Smith, got him late, wasn't a great value. Tua, really good value where I got him. Matt Stafford, Jalen Hurts, 12%, massive value right there. So, up and down Justin Herbert in terms of luck and in terms of just picking the right guy. But if you follow the strategy, you can turn a massive profit. Jerome Ford, a guy I was really believing. So here you go. Kendre Miller, horrible pick. And I knew it was a horrible pick. I did a exposure show leading up to the season, and this was the guy I stopped and paused and was like, don't feel really great about this. Kendre Miller having this much stake in him after seeing him in preseason, just looked absolutely lost on the NFL field for some reason, not like he was in TCU. Alexander Mattison, also not a great pick, but I didn't reach for him too much. I still had 25% share in him. He did score a lot of points for me, but then I just took great values like guys like Brian Robinson. Look, you see my Dalvin Cook, my Bijan Robinson, my Derrick Henry exposure. Not great running back exposure outside of Jerome Ford. Josh Jacobs wasn't great where I was getting him. Didn't reach for him. Still had 22%. So, you can still mess up and still turn a 60% profit in fantasy football. You don't have to have a crystal ball or anything. You just got to follow some simple rules and just be more efficient than the other dummies on the internet who paid $3 to enter this draft for you, paid $5 to enter this draft with you. Rashid Shaheed, like I said, the guy I was massively targeting. Safe guys, Puka Nacua, Michael Wilson, DeAndre Hopkins, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Rashee Rice, Van Jefferson, horrible selection there. But eye test guys, I think eye test for me, I really do a good job of looking at wide receivers, seeing how they move and seeing how much separation they get and making good assessments based off of that. So trust your eyes, and wide receivers, in my opinion, those advanced analytics are not going to get you anywhere, because there's so many things those advanced analytics aren't considering, like coaches, like quarterbacks. It's just not a reliable stat for these guys. Marvin Mims, horrible pick. Amari Cooper, Jordan Addison, Tyler Lockett, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson at 18%. So Garrett Wilson was a guy I was in love with in the preseason. Of course, his starting quarterback goes down. They don't have a backup, and they don't have really a head coach either there who can figure shit out, or a GM that can figure shit out, like get Flacco back in the building, right, guys? Garrett Wilson, obviously a horrible season for where I got him, but still got 18.4% of them, and I didn't reach for him too much, so it didn't crush my exposure. Same thing with Cooper Kupp. I was more optimistic after his first hamstring injury when he re-aggravated it in the preseason. I was like, oh, I'm fucked. I got too much on Cooper Kupp, but didn't reach on him. It wasn't like I was taking him first overall. I was taking Justin Jefferson, who I mean, obviously he has his own injury concerns and luck associated with that. Looking around here, hits and misses, Tim Patrick at 14%, which is like, he was out in the preseason. I was drafting him a ton. He maybe does have a massive season if he doesn't get injured leading up to it, but I didn't overreach for him. and it wasn't crippling to my pocketbook. Zay Flowers, Keenan Allen, Jaden Reed, AJ Brown, hits and misses all throughout here. You don't have to have a crystal ball to hit on these picks. And then I was loving taking tight ends, and another eye test thing for me. I feel like as receivers, I do a pretty good job of looking and seeing what they look like, trusting my eyes, and responding accordingly. Wish I had a little bit more share in Sam Laporta, of course, but rookie tight ends, he's a unique one. You don't usually want to reach on tight ends rookie-wise. So with Brock Bowers coming in, it really might shake things up. I can't wait to see kind of where he's going in these best ball drafts, because he might be overpicked a lot. And we're getting pretty low in my percent drafted. So those are the 4 rules of fantasy football and how to turn a profit reliably year after year, you guys. Rule number 1, beware of advanced analytics. Rule number 2, stay away from large contests. Rule number 3, be efficient in your drafts, use basic strategy. And rule number 4, chase good values in your draft. Thank you guys for watching the video. My name is Jamie Jakes. You can follow me at JAMJKS on X. Please subscribe to the channel. The good news is we're going to put content out all off season for best ball and for dynasty football, which of course is beneficial because we're looking into the rookie position a lot. So please tune in for that. And I'm a very small channel. You guys can see how many subscribers I have. At the time I'm recording, we're like just over 200. So subscribe to the channel and you'll get kind of like the secret stuff. You're not getting the stuff from the fantasy footballers or BDGE. You're getting the stuff that not everybody's following, and because of that, we have an advantage that we can we have an edge that we can take advantage of leading into this next fantasy football season. We also do live watch parties, so tune in for those for the rest of the playoffs. We also have a good time, a little bit less educational, a little bit more loosey-goosey, having fun, drinking some soda pops, and watching some football. Thank you guys, and good night.